Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where you are across this great wide world of ours. I'm gonna do a little video on reservations, and I have to keep my throat open, sinuses. Um, what I want to talk about is basically is that when we're talking about the reservations, we're getting into that summertime season, especially out west when when we talk about American Southwest. It's arid, dry, hot, and then I've done a couple videos in the past about water quality on the reservation, and I do have a book about that water quality on the reservation. I finished a little bit ago, but the point that I want to talk about this is when we start getting into these summer months, we start thinking about the hot weather and the availability of clean water source for many tribes out west. And like I said, I've said this before. I know that there are tribes east of the Mississippi, but a lot of my research works around the southwest region of the United States, where I worked on my PhD in psychology in this mindset that or disconnect that emerged well in the 19th century, 18th century about isolating Native Americans and putting them out west. Uh, what is the old cliche? Out of sight, out of mind. So a lot of these tribes, especially out west, are located in many isolated areas. But the downside of this as well is many of these tribes, or reservations, I should say, um, struggle with the clean water source, and especially case in point, we talk about New Mexico, especially in the areas where they're proving grounds where they would do bombing raids, and then the water would get tainted because of high uranium or even high amounts of salts from the bombing. So, in other words, what forms out of this is that reservations have to get water tanked in rather than depend on well water. And the issue that becomes, especially when we're looking at the summer months here, is that people and you can notice that in most people, once the weather starts warming up, there's more of a demand for water than there is a higher demand. I shouldn't say but there's a higher demand because people will use water more frequently in the hot, dry summer months. And that's my contention. And then what happens as well is once we get through the spring season, um, a lot of these streams and also well wells start decreasing in size. Stuff like the Mead Reservoir or the Hoover Dam or stuff like material like that. Glen Canyon Dam, Hoover Dam, and the Mead River are Mead Reservoir are basically the same. But the point here is that the demand for water increases in summer months. So we have to keep this in mind when we're talking about reservations that are in isolated areas. And this is one of my contentions that is being overlooked, that there has to be a source or a way that people can get water rather than to have water tanked into the reservations or have to go somewhere to get clean water source. And this coincides pre-COVID, because remember when I talk about this that a lot of Native American tribes had a higher rate of infection, had a higher rate of deaths due to the fact that they lacked, some tribes, not all of them, but some tribes lacked a clean water source. And the use of available to even, modern, people take it granted when they live within a city that they have water. And then when you go out on a reservation, in some cases, the water is not available, except for, like I said, if we talk about casinos, and that's another video for another time, because I really think the the, the philosophy, or the understanding of having casinos on reservations, and granted, I understand that's for infrastructure and for social and medical services. Um, at some point, it's going to start to decline, and I believe, like the mall situation that occurred in it reached their peak in the 19. The same thing is going to happen to a lot of these casinos, to the fact that people will have access to online gambling and necessarily not drive 20, 30 minutes to go to an isolated casino. So the factor may be to look into online gambling for the casinos, but is that really going to be practical in itself? My contention is to revamp or reform the BIA, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and to have it streamlined, and then that way the monies or the revenue from the federal as well as the state normally excuse me, like I said, in my dry throat, normally it is the state that or I mean the federal, not the state, that has the revenue for uh, the reservations. And if we can streamline the reservations in a sense that the BIA can, instead of having 12 divisions, narrow it down to 12 and get rid of some of the administrative costs and turn that money over to the local tribes who have a better, what I mean by local tribes, I'm talking about the leadership within the tribes. And like I said, I apologize again for this, but you got to drive through, is to take that money and to use it for the leadership within the tribe, because they have a better hands-on than, say, the federal government does. And remember, when we talk about the BIA, it's located in Washington, D.C., and even though they have regional offices, sometimes it's best that the tribes themselves run the money rather than run it through a regional office. And my contention is divided, instead of 12 regional offices, divided into 4 regional offices. Cut your administrative cost and apply those more to the reservations, the leadership within the reservations itself. And the key point of this comes back to the point when we're talking about water quality, especially in the summer months. We don't know. We might get into a drought season, or it may be a wet season. I have no clue. If it's a wet season, good for the tribes, because then there's more availability of clean water source. If we get into 2 or 3 years of drought again, like we did a few years back, then we have some issues about bringing in well water and creating other issues that people, instead of other than cisterns, to be able to have a water source. So, and there again, to have the infrastructure on the reservations itself, which probably would be costly itself, but then again, we are paying a lot of money themselves for a war in Ukraine, and maybe some of those costs and some of the other stuff that we're doing, maybe we ought to more align and create an infrastructure for the Native Americans to have a clean water source than to deal with the issue of having to deal with another outbreak of COVID, or in the fall, and could be get a real bad case of influenza, and see higher deaths and higher sickness on reservations. And normally, what the people that impact the most are the elderly tribes people, as well as the young, and both are needed for indigenous people to survive. It's not like when we talk about the Dawes Act, where they remove the children and put them on to Christianize uh, Native American children, which was a bad decision in itself. And uh, but this goes back to Benjamin Harrison, as well as Ulysses Grant, where they always called the Indian problem. And part of that Indian problem was the demise of the buffalo, which was used as a ceremonial, as also a food source for many of the Native American Indians in the plains, in the upper plains, and part of tribes out west. Not necessarily in Arizona, but we're talking about plains. But the case in point, a lot of tribes really realized what they were doing when they were forced encampment. But we can also talk about the Cochise, where they were trying to force them onto reservations, and they would go back and forth into Mexico. So, but the point that I was trying to make about this video today was the fact that we're talking about water and clean water source, and we have to take that in account. And there again, I think the BIA drags their feet on it. So anyway, these are some foods for thoughts. Please like and subscribe to my video. Feel free to email me at bthomasmillerpsych@gmail.com. Also, I do have books available on Amazon. They're Don't Buy the Lottery Ticket, Water Quality on the Reservation, Casinos and Administering Returns on the Reservations, etc. So anyway, thanks folks, and hope to hear from you real soon. Have a great day.